Safe crane operation can be divided into 4 broad areas. First is a basic understanding of the different types of cranes and how they work. Second is the ability to read a crane load chart. Third is pre-planning, observing, and adjusting to conditions at the work site. Fourth is the actual lifting operation. Crane operators must recognize that there are many different types and models of national cranes. They include telescoping and articulating truck-mounted cranes, along with pedestal mounted in both styles. Both styles are available with several different options, including jibs, personnel baskets, augers, grapples, pallet forks, and other material handling equipment. Each type of crane may have its own peculiarities and special features. For this reason, the operator must always be fully knowledgeable of the crane's operation before using it. The operator and other personnel working around the crane must read, understand, and follow the safety instructions provided in the owner's manual. Before putting the crane to work at the job site, a daily inspection should be performed emphasizing fasteners, pin retainers, mounting hardware, and all operator aids. The Safety and Operations section of the manual is an important instructional resource that should always be kept in the cab, where it will be readily available for reference by the operator and others. The owner's manual can also be stored in a special holder, which can be mounted on the crane and is available from National. If an owner's manual is not present with the crane, one should be ordered immediately for the specific crane serial number. All warning and instructional decals and placards installed on the crane by the manufacturer should be read and heeded. Any decal or placard that becomes worn, damaged, or missing should be promptly replaced. The operator must be familiar with all applicable local, state, and federal regulations, national safety standards, and job site rules. Operators shall be required to successfully meet the qualifications for the specific type of crane they are to operate under the guidelines set up by the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. The operator must know about the various types of wire rope used on cranes. Different types of wire rope have differing characteristics and limitations. Therefore, it is important to know and implement the wire rope manufacturer's recommendations concerning proper care, handling, cutting, maintenance, inspection, installation, lubrication, and use of the wire rope. The operator and crew members setting up cranes and handling loads are expected to know and practice proper crane erection and safe rigging procedures. Slings, chokers, chains, spreaders, and other rigging equipment must be of the proper type, size, and strength, and be properly installed. The operator and other personnel must know how to properly and safely set the crane up, and how to properly and safely erect and stow jibs if provided. The operator should have a working knowledge of how power is transferred through the crane's electrical and hydraulic systems, and be aware of special characteristics of these systems, such as thermal expansion and contraction of oil in hydraulic cylinders. The operator must also understand how to read and interpret each of the crane's instruments and gauges. When operating a crane equipped with electronic equipment, such as a load moment indicating system, the operator must have a thorough knowledge of how such a system works and how to use it. Because there are different types of crane limiting and indicating devices and systems, knowledge of the crane's particular system is essential. The operator must understand that while operator aids such as load moment indicators, hydraulic capacity alert systems, anti-two-block systems, and hoist drum rotation indicators may be extremely helpful, they must not be relied upon for safe crane operation. These systems are only to be used as operator aids. The crane operator must remain in control of the crane at all times and must be certain that the loads lifted are within the rated winch capacity as well as within the rated crane capacity. If your crane does not already have an anti-two-block system and some type of capacity alert system, National Crane strongly recommends that you order and install an appropriate system as soon as possible. The anti-two-block system and capacity alert should be inspected for proper operation before each work shift. The operator must use his own skill and knowledge to determine the weight of the load and to decide whether or not it can be lifted. The operator must also be able to determine where its center of gravity is located and if the load is properly balanced. He must be aware of and avoid conditions such as side loading, dynamic loading, and shock loading. Each can have an adverse effect on the crane's structural and capacity limits, as well as damaging the crane's wire rope. By now, it should be apparent that there are many things to know and understand about cranes. Safe crane operation can be achieved only if everyone involved with the crane crew consistently follows safe work practices and applies their knowledge and common sense to lifting operations. Strict adherence to the crane's load chart is one of the most important parts of safe crane operation. The operator must fully and completely understand the chart provided with the crane prior to making any lifts. He must understand what is included in the load and be able to make appropriate deductions for hook blocks, rigging, and other attachments. The operator must be able to use the range diagram and working area diagram to pre-plan lifts and determine capacities. When using a crane equipped with a load moment indicating system, the operator must program the system to correspond with the crane's configuration and applicable load chart. It is important that you know the weight of any load that you are attempting to handle. This should be done by use of a dynamometer or by contacting your supervisor. No load should ever be lifted that is in excess of the capacities on the crane's load chart. The load rating chart represents the manufacturer's limitations of the crane's lifting capacity. To exceed load chart capacities would be a direct violation of safe crane operating practices. Even before a crane is brought onto a job site, planning should begin and the area should be thoroughly inspected to determine if safe crane operation is possible. The ground surface at the site must be firm and capable of supporting the total weight of the crane and all loads to be lifted. The surface must also be level enough to allow the crane itself to be leveled. For uneven surfaces, and to assist in leveling, proper cribbing should be selected and prepared prior to crane setup. Do not set up on surfaces which may not support the outriggers, such as thin concrete or asphalt, and mud or soft terrain. The work site must be accessible, free of obstructions, and have adequate clearance to safely operate the crane. There must be sufficient space to properly extend the outriggers and to rotate the superstructure and boom through their intended working positions. The vehicle should be positioned so that it is impossible for any portion of the equipment to come within the minimum required safe distance to any energized power line. If power lines are in the vicinity of any portion of the crane, the boom, or loads to be lifted, the power company should be notified prior to operating the crane or making any lifts. Positive assurance that power has been turned off should be obtained before working in the vicinity of power lines. OSHA requires that you must maintain a clearance of at least 10 feet between any part of the crane, load line or load, and any electrical line or apparatus carrying up to 50,000 volts. 1 foot additional clearance is required for every additional 30,000 volts or less. Ground markers must be set in place 10 feet out from power lines so they can be used as a reference to assist in making sure the crane does not encroach on the 10-foot minimum clearance. Remember, power lines and load lines deflect in winds, and additional clearances must be allowed. A signal person shall be used to alert the operator when he is approaching the minimum distance for safe operation. If you do not know the voltage of the electrical line, and therefore the minimum required safe distance, you shall request the electrical utility to advise you of the line's voltage. Death or serious injury will result from contact or arcing due to inadequate clearance to anyone working on or around the crane. All overhead wires should be considered energized until the electrical utility authorities verify that they are not, and the wires are visibly grounded. Proper job planning must include determining boom lengths, working heights, and the working radius that will be used on the job site to perform the necessary lifts. The site must provide adequate clearance from all obstructions in the path of the crane and the load being positioned. Environmental conditions at the job site can affect the safety of lifting operations. Crane operations should be discontinued at the sign of impending thunderstorms or in high winds. When it comes to actual crane operation, safety requires a conscious effort by all persons involved, from planning and setup through each lift. An essential part of planning for any lift operation is personal preparation on the part of the crane operator. Only well-trained and responsible personnel should operate and work near a crane. The crane operator and other personnel must be physically fit and mentally alert at all times. They should each be equipped with necessary personal protective equipment, such as hard hats, eyewear, gloves, and work shoes. Another part of planning the lift involves performing periodic inspections and routine maintenance of the crane. The crane must be in proper working condition to ensure safe operation. No lift should ever be made with a crane that has been poorly maintained, is damaged, or is malfunctioning in any way. The crane service manual should be consulted for proper inspection, maintenance, and repair procedures, and all crane modification must be factory authorized. Prior to operation of the crane, all hooks, hook blocks, latches, shivs, and wire rope should be inspected for damage. All damaged components should be repaired or replaced as necessary. Wire rope should be inspected for wear, broken wires or strands, mechanical damage, and for proper lay on the hoist drum. The wire rope manufacturer's recommendation should be followed for proper wire rope inspection, lubrication, handling, installation, and maintenance procedures. The boom and boom extensions should be inspected for cracks or damage. Hydraulic cylinders and components should be examined for leaks and settling. Engine oil and coolant should be checked and filled to recommended levels. All controls and operator aids should be checked for proper functioning prior to making any lifts. Overall, the crane should be kept clean and free from dirt and oil. Keep all climbing, walking, and working surfaces clean, and use only the manufacturer's designated access system for getting on and off the crane. It is an OSHA requirement that updated inspection records be kept. One good way to perform inspections is to use a checklist supplied by the crane manufacturer. Use of the maintenance and inspection log can help you ensure the crane is in proper working order. Getting the crane safely to the job site requires special planning. Prior to travel, the crane should be inspected for road readiness. Tires should be inspected for proper inflation and wear. The brakes and lights should be checked for proper functioning. Before moving the truck, the boom should be properly secured in a boom rest and the hook weight attached and secured. A travel route should be planned, taking into account width, height, length, and weight limits to ensure adequate clearance and load limitations for bridges and any other obstructions along the route to be traveled. Do not allow anyone to ride on the equipment when it is being transported. Once on the job site, operations must be well planned and coordinated with all personnel. Riggers, load handlers, and the crane operator should be thoroughly familiar with ANSI-recognized hand signals. The designated signal person should be positioned where the crane operator can see him at all times. Access to the crane and job site must be restricted. Only necessary personnel should be allowed in the vicinity of the crane and the load being lifted. No one other than the operator should be on the crane when it is in motion. When the crane is in position and effective communication between the signal person and the operator has been established, crane setup can begin. The decision should be made on whether or not multi-part reeving will be needed or the jib deployed. If equipped with a load moment indicator, it should be programmed to the proper setting. All outriggers shall be extended fully out, then down to a firm surface. Use outriggers as necessary to level the truck side to side, then stabilizers to level the truck front to back. A level indicator is provided at the operator's control station. If your national crane is equipped with a front stabilizer, be sure it has been extended. If the outriggers are not visible at the operator's station, a signal person must be used to be sure the outriggers are set safely. If using a telescoping model, the operator should then elevate the boom and extend the sections to the desired working height. If an articulating crane is being used, the boom should be telescoped out to the desired hook point prior to making the lift. This will allow a capacity load to be positioned anywhere the hook arc permits, with as little telescoping and retracting as possible. If barricades are required, they should be placed where they will be most effective. The crane operator is in command of all setup procedures and makes the final determination as to whether or not the crane and job site are prepared for safe lifting operations. When the operator is satisfied with the setup and condition of the crane, rigging the load can begin. The operator must make sure he knows the weight of the load and the location of its center of gravity. Overloading can cause a mobile crane to overturn or fail structurally. The operator must also be satisfied that the load is properly rigged prior to lifting. At this point, the operator must recheck the crane's load chart to make sure that the load to be lifted will remain within the crane's capacity limits throughout the lift. Remember, load moment indicating systems and hydraulic capacity alert systems should only be used as operator aids and should not be relied upon for safe operation. Safety must be the most important concern of the operator, who is in complete command of the operation of the crane. Each load should be moved slowly and smoothly, and, if required, non-conductive tag lines should be used to control motion of the load throughout each lift. The signal person and crane operator must stay alert to ensure that no part of the load, wire rope, or boom comes too close to electrical power lines or other obstructions. When working near power lines, the signal person's sole duty is to observe clearance of the equipment and give timely warning to the crane operator. Safe crane operation during a lift depends upon the alertness and skill of the personnel involved. After lifting operations have been completed and the load detached from the hook weight or hook point, the crane must be properly shut down and secured. The boom should be retracted and lowered. and the jib stowed if in use. The boom should be placed in an appropriate boom rest and the hook block secured before traveling. In summary, safe crane operation depends upon planning, the operator's technical knowledge of the crane, proper setup, reading, understanding, and following load charts, observation of and adjustment to job site conditions, effective communication, and applying personal skills and common sense during lifting operations. While it is not possible nor practical to try to cover every aspect of crane safety in one program, we hope that the safety precautions in this video provide you with a solid foundation for developing good safety habits. Read and follow all the safety instructions provided by your company and the crane manufacturer. Then put what you've learned into practice. You'll be protecting yourself as well as others from serious harm and expense.